second panel discussion of the 2022 AFIC conference, work skills and labour shortages, something I think we can all resonate with. Planning for the future. Our stage panellists are Joe Gaddes, did I say that right? Yeah, Gaddes, hello Joe. General Manager, from TAFE Queensland, right here, and of course has provided some of the TAFE students for today, who are event management students. Welcome back to the stage, Badi, General Manager of Casual Hands, and of course we saw your fantastic presentation yesterday. We spoke in depth about labour shortages and how you can minimise that. We've got some slides to show, haven't we, regarding... We've got some slides. Have you got some two slides? Yeah. Okay. Have you got?
Yeah, they got something up. Is this on? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Guys, just continuing from yesterday. This is from one of the events we did where we supplied guest staff. For Casual Hands, obviously, and I keep harping on this all the time. It's all about the people. The success of your events, so we like to claim, come down to the people. They represent that front, right? They manage the back, they manage the front. The greatest planning in the world will fail without the right people.
No, I'm going to get this right. What's that? The big one. I am pressing the big one. There we go.
Oh, we could have skipped that. It's terrible. Who chose that photo? What does it say?
It says your name.
It says my name. All right, guys, bit of background. So I started this with my sister, and we did this back in 2012. We were looking at the market and seeing what was available. And part of the, I guess the starter was to come in and start to offer, opportunities for different parts of the community who were involved within that casual space to ensure that they were looked after appropriately. And this came down to from proper training, proper remuneration. One of the main, I think, catalysts for that was the 7-Eleven. If you remember those guys being underpaid, nationally, and we saw that from our involvement in different community groups. We understood that certain sectors where there was an increased level of wage theft and exploitation involved with that. So that's why we got into the market, and it's grown from there.
Wonderful. All right, thanks, Badi. And also welcoming to the stage, Gayle O'Brien, General Manager, Tourism Policy, Partnerships and Events with the Queensland Government, Department of Tourism, Innovation and Sport. Welcome, Gayle. All right, well, let's kick off the panel discussion. Each of you bring a unique perspective to the discussion that we're featuring today. One of the most common complaints from those who work in the festival industry is, of course, that they can't find qualified and or experienced staff, which is, of course, what we're here to talk about. Gayle, would you like to start with that particular comment? Where do you go from there when people say to you, we would love to run something, and they come to you, in your expertise, where do you go when there's no skilled labour or there is labour shortages?
It's definitely challenging, and we've actually created a jobs website, which is very unusual for a government to do, tourism and hospitality jobs website, and we've been going out to a lot of the event operators, event proponents, and actually making sure all of their jobs are listed and really getting out there to potential cohorts of workers so that we can try and link more people looking for jobs to the jobs that are available. And we know that tourism and hospitality industry as a whole has a huge shortage of jobs right across the state. And it's definitely working with all of our industry partners, and we work with the Australian government, with labour hire companies, etc., and letting them all know about the job shortage and where the jobs are actually needed, the exact types of roles and the quantities of roles, and then how we can actually skill people up to fill those.
Well, Joe, you're skilling some of those people up, aren't you, in your capacity at TAFE? Can you talk us through more about that? And when there are job shortages, is that a great thing for some of the students you teach? I mean, does that give them more opportunity, or is that perhaps, I don't know, is it not?
Yeah, I guess it's a really interesting question, because often study is an option when there isn't a lot of jobs out there, so people will look and think, okay, I'm struggling to find work, so let's study something that I want, and where's there going to be a job prospect? So we're in a unique situation right now where students, there's actually more opportunity right now in the job market. So some people don't need that study option and they can walk straight into roles. I'm even seeing, we follow a lot and we share a lot of the opportunities with our students, but I'm seeing more and more ads come through saying no experience required, no skills needed. So they're able to get into jobs where previously that hasn't always been the case. And I find that when there is more choice in the market for employers, I think then people will, that study option will have to come back again, where people will need to have skills, experience through study, and that will change that market again.
Joe, I think it's also worth mentioning, if there's any people from the Gold Coast here who live and work in the Gold Coast and put on events at the Gold Coast, to think about you, because you've got the TAFE students there who make great volunteers and can also count working at various festivals towards their score. Is that right? Yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Most of the courses, whether it be through the vet sector, like ourselves, like the Cert 3 in events and the Cert 4 in events, and also in the Diploma of Event Management, which is more of a 12-month course. And then you go on to the university degrees as well. Most of those courses, especially in our vet sector, they require a work experience component or a vocational placement component where they do need that experience. But we do that anyway. We understand the importance of learning real life skills. There's no point learning everything in a classroom. So this is our classroom, and you've seen the students over the last few days. You've probably seen them all come through doing different roles, and that's a really important component of adding to their resume, as well as learning their experience. And right now, the students are actually doing a registration assessment. So they're not only learning on the job, but they're actually being assessed on the job as well. So we can factor all those skills that they need to be able to process registrations and implement it into a real life scenario.
Excellent. Badi, as the General Manager of a national event staffing agency, I know you spoke in detail yesterday, but again, just going by the fact that we are short-staffed and, lacking a lot of skilled people in the entertainment industry, it was interesting to hear, I think this morning it was mentioned that so many festival event people left the industry to go and work elsewhere because of COVID. Do you want to add to that and to what Gayle and Joe have said?
I'm a big supporter of TAFE, just to say that. I think they do wonderful things, and it's wonderful to see, when Joe talks about what they do, I'm like, all go TAFE, because we need that. I think one of the shortfalls has been this skill development. We had so much talent coming in that businesses didn't really need to focus on that, and it sort of fell to the wayside a little bit, and that's where TAFE is wonderful. But in terms of the moving out, let's be honest, if you worked in events, if you worked in the festival sector, you've moved into a job now where you have certainty. You can be home at night and spend it alone, or spend it with your kids or family or whatever you wanted to. Got a couple of weekends free. You don't have to freeze, or you don't have to boil necessarily, or put up with a lot of the behaviours that sometimes come from the events that we all host and run and provide. And so the love is there, but now people, they have drifted away, and we've lost a lot of good talent, where they've gone into other areas and just found a nice groove. So to get them back is very, very difficult. And, when they look at what's there, they're sort of, So it's not necessarily money as well, but yeah, there is a massive skill shortage, like experience-wise.
Gayle, do you want to add to that? What are you guys doing? Are you guys doing anything as far as trying to lure people back? Or, I'm guessing that we can't do a lot about the fact that we can't have a lot of, migrants, taking a lot of the jobs that they would normally be filled by. But what are the Queensland government doing in terms of making sure that we're not in the future, we're future-proofing skill shortages and labour shortages?
Yeah, there's a couple of things we're doing, from trying to fill the immediate skills needs, as well as how to encourage young people to have a career in the industry. And in terms of filling the immediate needs, we ran a incentive program along with our Work in Paradise. This was part of Work in Paradise, actually. And we were paying a $1,500 incentive for people to take up a job in the tourism and events industry in regional Queensland. So we got about 3,500 jobs filled through that program, and that closed earlier this year. And we're also working with Tourism and Events Queensland doing the working holidayer, because a lot of our casual jobs are filled by working holiday makers. So working with Tourism Australia, running campaigns. We've got a campaign going with Greyhound. We've had over 200 people take up that campaign. So working holiday makers in other states to travel to Queensland on a Greyhound bus, and trying to get them up here so that they can fill those valuable casual jobs, but also go to events and festivals and things, because they're great patrons for that. And then in terms of the next generation, we've got this program called Young Tourism Leaders. So it's been going since 2018. We've had about 100 leaders through the program so far. A number of those have worked in events, and they go and speak to school students and university students and TAFE students, mostly school from years 10 to 12. They go to lots of career fairs, but they all work in the industry. It's a voluntary role, and they go and talk about, how did I actually get into this industry? What was my career path? What did I want to do when I left school? But I'm not doing that now. How did I actually, no one's path is rarely linear. And they talk all about that, and they're in incredibly high demand. So as soon as we open registrations at the end of January for that year, we will receive hundreds of bookings from schools all over the state wanting to have these leaders come and speak to their students, and teachers booking us in year after year. So this year we've already spoken to over 10,000 students, and we've still got lots of bookings right through till December. And that's really encouraging people that, and really probably changing the mindset. So hospitality, tourism, events, it can be a lifelong career. It's really exciting. It can take you places. They talk about they like to throw in lots of anecdotes of all the exciting and really different things they've done or people they've met, to start to really plant that seed that this is an industry you want to work in, and it's not all being the person at the gate who does the tickets, the security guard, or someone working in a bar. There's lots of different, the breadth of and depth of roles is really quite varied and really interesting. So that's been going really well, and we've now actually had some people who are working in the industry have become young tourism leaders, and they've said, so-and-so came to my school, and when I heard them, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So that's when we knew that the program was working and we were starting to make a difference.
Did you want to add anything to that, Jo?
Yeah, I think it is really important, and it's something we're even working at TAFE with. We've got the QTIC, Queensland Tourism Industry Council, come and try days, which is the road shows that are going all over TAFEs through Queensland. Ours is next week, so it's really exciting. And the whole idea is get new job seekers and get school leavers in to try a trade, and events is one of those, and hospitality and tourism. And it's really important to show them that it is as diverse as it looks, it is as exciting as it looks, and there's a lot of really cool pathways, and it is a career. It's a really great career choice. So it's the road shows are going really well, and I've seen some of the photos from the other areas of the state that have run them already. So looking forward to seeing how many people come through. There's a series of 8 different workshops that they will do. 8 different groups that will be taking through all the workshops, and see if we can get them excited about events.
Excellent. Badi, is there a particular occupation that you've been struggling to recruit for more than others?
Culinary. Chefs, pantry butlers, anything within that field. I think with a lot of the visa changes that happened, and some of the exodus, a lot of the resourcing came from the international student market into those sectors as they came in and they studied as those were skills listed, and they've sort of left. And so we're finding for a lot of the event ones, we get non-stop, can you find me a chef? I'm happy to take a sous chef. I'm happy to take a kitchen hand, a dishwasher, whatever it might be. That is probably the hardest, I think, area where we're struggling right now to recruit.
So what can Gayle do to help you? Cheeky, I know.
We're starting to see government realise that. So we're seeing uptakes in terms of some of the courses that are being presented, but probably a bit more support on that and awareness. I think when you talked about working with labour hire companies and other areas, talking about where the job opportunities sit, I think in terms of the job seekers and the roadshows, if you guys are doing that, that's wonderful, right? I think that awareness to build where the opportunities sit and where the benefits come out of it, because there has to be a defined benefit for the guys as well. It's not going to be you get to go and wash dishes in the kitchen and good for you. You know, that where you talked about it being a trade, I think if they're able to build it into something that's longer term, come and upskill and build yourself a great lifestyle, you know, and have some wonderful experiences.
Talking to some of the people last night at the welcome drinks, I did speak to a couple of people who are in remote areas, putting on events in remote areas, and we talked about staffing issues, getting staff, getting people down to those remote areas for these festivals. How do you make it attractive? I mean, it's, you know, some of these events, some people here in this room are probably putting events on that are, you know, really, really far away. You know, we're talking, you know, hundreds of kilometres away from the nearest town or whatever, you know, they're small. How do you make that attractive to some of your workers? You know, why would they want to get on a bus and travel? And yeah, what's in it for them? I mean, how do you facilitate that? Because these events need workers as well.
Regional is really hard. I think that's where, if you want to say one area, is there a particular place where we struggle to, to find resourcing from? Yeah, it's not the cities. It's not any particular cities. A lot of the capital cities and some of the metro areas around them are not difficult. Even some of the smaller towns are not bad. But as soon as you start going regional, and some of the most wonderful events get hosted in some of those. So we had a wonderful discussion yesterday regarding the Hunter region. You know, there was a time where you ran big concerts, and you know, you would have all these different events that would happen, small, big, but they're disappearing. And I don't know. I really don't know. We try incentives, but I'll be honest, at the moment we're finding that financial incentives just don't work. You know, where you sit there and you promise someone and say, I'm happy to pay you a little bit more, there's a bonus. It needs to tie in. So what we're starting to do is, for some of the work that we've done, you tie in the overall experience of it. So for everything from the transportation down, we're organizing collective groups. The accommodation that gets put across as well, we promise a certain standard, because you know they don't want to be four in a room, you know, living in there or whatever it might be. And then also we try and plan some activities around it. So you know, after the event is over, you know, guys will have this. You know, there's a nearby site. We're happy to take you across, and you can spend the morning there if need be. It's kind of working. It's not the solution, but it's, you know, it sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. We're trying anything and everything at the moment, but just pure money, pure dollars doesn't seem to be cutting it.
Yeah. Maybe make it Instagram worthy for the younger kids. I don't know. Joe, did you want to add something?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I think volunteers in the past, they do travel if it's an event they're interested in.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was talking to just one of the event organisers and saying, oh, did you need help with volunteers? And she said, no, actually, there was so many people that wanted to attend the event but couldn't afford to, and they are all my volunteers. So they get a free ticket to the event and volunteering. And I know, even talking to people about the KISS concert, people they were looking for workers for this concert, but there was a lot of people that were like, they were willing to volunteer if they had an opportunity to see something they couldn't otherwise afford. So we've had students that have travelled all the way. I know it's easy to say they've travelled all the way to go and volunteer at Splendour Blues, and because it is something they're really interested in. So maybe just getting it out to your fans, the people that would not normally be able to, but if you can offer, okay, well, we've got some volunteer accommodation, we've got doing this, if you can come along and volunteer your time, look at the people that are following you.
Gayle, I'll direct this to you. Is there any parts of research to indicate if skill shortages are being experienced in certain parts of Queensland?
Yeah, there definitely is. The skills shortages we've seen, especially far north Queensland, Sunshine Coast, Brisbane. We're looking at around 7,000 vacancies in the tourism and hospitality and event space in the Cairns region. Overall, we talked about chefs before. There's over 1,000 chef vacancies just in Queensland, and incredibly hard to fill them. And we were working on, which Joe might be able to talk about next, is we did a pilot with TAFE around getting more chefs through and speeding up that chef training. And, just all of the waiters, nearly 1,000 waiters. And there's the Sunshine Coast, we've noticed, is particularly hardly hit. It's kind of strange, really, because it's so close to Brisbane. But like many regions, and we see this especially in a lot of the smaller ones and the outback in particular, finding accommodation is difficult. So for the availability of suitable accommodation, the affordability of suitable accommodation, so getting people to move from interstate, from between cross states, from the city to the country, wherever, can be challenging because they do have to find somewhere to live. And just building on what was said earlier, in terms of trying to build the attractiveness of jobs in the industry, one thing we did with Work in Paradise was promote what you can do in addition to your day job. So you might be working in the evenings, you have all day to play, and showing pictures of people jumping off boats into the water and going rock climbing and all sorts of things. So selling the actual lifestyle aspect of it, because that seemed to grab a lot more attention and a lot more traction than just selling a job. Essentially, it's the whole thing.
Did you want to add to that? Did you want to add to that?
Absolutely. I think the lifestyle aspect is huge. A lot of the people we've lost, and I think we're critical to that event sphere, where people who had a job that was quite regular, but then would commit a day or two a week or a period of time where they would come through and do it, whether it be weekend events that would go through an agency, make themselves available, they've disappeared. And so trying to get them back. And I think that lifestyle aspect as well, and not just even the afters and the other events you can do, but I think we forget that sometimes you have some really cool performers and acts and people that come through to the events, and you get to see them and you get to be involved, and there's the buzz there. It's just wonderful. Like, I think back in the last 10 years for me, it's just been magic. Not the greatest. Sometimes you're sitting there and you're assisting with guest services and you're standing around going, what am I doing? And then you feel the vibe, you hear the music, or you hear whatever it is, and you go, yeah, this is great. And you walk away at the end of the night from your job and there's a nice buzz to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, that lifestyle aspect, but trying to get those people back in as well. Just the casuals within the casual market, I guess, would be a good place to try again.
And Joe, I'm not sure if you actually said this, but how are enrolment rates now for event management? Are things slowly returning back to normal?
It's slow and steady.
Right.
I think there's been a lot of change in the education side too. So we went from where years past, I'd love to see the return of those type of numbers where there was a lot of funding, to TAFE, a lot of support of TAFE, and we had huge numbers come through our event courses. With privatisation and with other things that affected us, and it has changed a little bit for us, though not too bad. We've got some other things happening, that students can actually do vet fee help now, which is kind of like HEX for their course. The numbers still aren't the same, but even in 2019 and 2020, the numbers were still pretty good. Job prospects were good in the event field. People would go, oh, geez, I'd like to do this and do that, and it was exciting. And Gold Coast were very lucky because the Gold Coast is very diverse. There's a lot of opportunities for events, and we're very tourism driven, so it means that there's a lot of tourism driven events, which is great. But COVID did change everything. Everything went to an abrupt stop, and people were more cautious of choosing a career that, is there going to be an event prospect is there a job prospect at the end of this event course? So yeah, it has been a bit slower. We're doing things a little bit differently. We've been offering a dual course, so it's a dual diploma of hospitality management and events. We've been doing that for a couple of years now, and we're finding that those students are getting amazing job opportunities at the end because they've got that hospitality and event component on it. So that seems, but once again, we want to see more numbers come through, and hopefully they'll start to realise how important it is to study at TAFE and to get that hands-on learning as well as the skills and knowledge and experience that they need on their resume, and the volunteering opportunities that they get from our amazing partnerships that we have. We work really closely with MEGC, which you heard Jan this morning. So the guys are working this weekend at a springtime, which is they're really excited about. Groundwater, Coolie Rocks On is a really important one for us. We've been working with Coolie Rocks On now for the last 4 years. All of our students go through it we make it an accessible a task. And you can imagine doing a normal registration at a conference and you're just checking delegate after delegate through, and then all of a sudden you're in this, we're on the beach and there's 1,000 cars checking in, and you're checking in cars and classic cars, and it's so different for a registration task for them. So it's a really interesting way to look at lifestyle festivals. So they do really love all the festivals, and we had the opportunity to work at Blues this year as well, and then we try to volunteer at so many different events that we partner with. So things like the QTIC that's coming up, MEA, the Means Events Australia, partnerships with the Madrabah show, like regional, it's kind of regional show like Gold Coast show. So we try to get them to do as much as they can and have this big diverse experience to come out. And
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Gayle, the Queensland government must be thrilled about hosting the 2030 Olympics in Brisbane. How are you going to address these shortages, these labour shortages? Will you get it together in time?
Well, let's hope so. Yeah, so the 2032 Olympics, that green and gold runway that we're all working towards over the next 10 years, and and it's estimated to have 8.1 billion return for the Queensland economy, and that's massive, and create nearly 100,000 jobs. So that's that's pretty mind-boggling when you think of those numbers. On top of, there's already going to be about another 200,000 to 300,000 jobs required over the next 10 years as well. So we know that it's Brisbane, it's southeast Queensland, it's Brisbane, it's Sunshine Coast primarily. And there's going to be all of the construction jobs, there's going to be all of the service requirements that are needed, and then there'll be all the events and things that happen after the games. So we're not just looking at it'll all finish at 2032, it'll actually be, we call it a 10 plus 10, so there'll be the years after that, and what does that mean? And a lot of that is what we can put in place in terms of events and festivals especially. What new things can we put in place now that can continue on, that can sort of start to reach their peak by 2032. And one example is the Queensland Music Trails. So the Queensland Government is investing $20 million to QMF, to Queensland Music Festival, to establish the Queensland Music Trails, which is 4 trails, and there'll be 4 each year for the next 3 years just to get that started, and 16 events each year. So that will have, there'll be a workforce component to that, there'll be a housing component to that, how do you actually accommodate these? And we're looking at all different types of models, because a lot of it will be temporary accommodation and camping, etc., not only for the workforce but also for the people participating, attending those concerts. And that also links in with the New Arts Queensland strategy as well, a 4-year strategy to really stimulate the arts and culture. So in addition to that, we're developing a tourism and events strategy, which will be released in a couple of months. And workforce is a key component of that, and how we actually work with the Australian government. And things like, how do we actually get more of the tourism, events, festivals types of roles, not only both growing our own, so actually getting people skilled up, but how do we also bring in skilled migrants for those particular roles? Because we've talked before about, you can actually put people through training, or you can bring people in who are unskilled to learn on the job, but you don't actually have all that experience sitting behind you. So sometimes it is those skilled migrants needing to come in that have got that strong experience that can then help and work alongside those people who are just entering the industry. So it's a bit of a combination as to how we're going to approach the next 10 years.
I'll put this question to all of you. What still needs to be done to help accelerate the post-pandemic recovery process for the industry nationwide?
Sorry, I'll check this working. We were just talking about that. It's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of the Jobs Summit tomorrow in Canberra, to see what comes out of that. I know there's a lot of talk about skilled migration. We know that cookery is on the skilled migration. That helps with the international numbers. It'll be great to see the event and hospitality industry on that list as well, to help us fill our skilled roles and the event management roles that we're struggling with. So that would be great to see. I'll be watching keenly. I know we've probably all seen on our socials the announcement that they're talking about 13-year-olds entering the workforce, which will be discussed tomorrow. And I think some work on even workforce participation, people, the older market re-entering the workforce. It'll be interesting to see what comes of that and how that will spread out to the event industry.
Yeah, it would be great to get to a point where age discrimination, and I'm talking young people, I think older people who perhaps left the workforce that have got so much to offer, certainly if they worked in events and or crew, etc., and are still agile and able to work, I mean, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And I think looking at, and we need to know this as even in the event industry, the whole great resignation, they're calling it, or the great attrition of what happened through the pandemic, looking at how to get re-engagement back into the industry. So looking at flexibility in the workforce, maybe hiring 2 part-timers rather than a full-timer, looking at ways that we can be more flexible. That's what we know the youth are looking for now, flexibility in their work. So looking at how we can make that work for us as event organisers and event managers too.
Jane, can I just, you referenced as well in terms of age discrimination within the sector. We're pushing an app at the moment, and most people, above a certain age, and I'm getting to that point where you start to forget how to use technology. And in terms of saying, you need to go through here and you can find opportunities and wait for the notifications and the engagement, people just zone out, they don't know what you're talking about. And I think we're missing out within this festival and events because we like to go for the young guys, right? We go, listen, we get the young people in, they work, they're a bit cheaper, but we're missing out on some really valuable resources and available resources right now. We're finding that we're having to go through traditional resourcing, so even some government agencies through community centres and community groups just to actively recruit for some of those sectors. For some of the government programs we run, they say we want over 50s for this, and we can't just go on our app and type it in. We get them on eventually and we show them how to do it, but some of them don't even have the phones that are capable of running it. They're still using standard of the old style, no touchscreen, you press a button or you flip it. I love the flip phones, by the way. But in terms of where we go as well further for the industry going forward, I had a really lovely discussion with Linda outside just before we came here, and we were talking about collaboration. Even Carlina yesterday, we were talking, she identified a gap where within the festival and event industry, there was no national conference. We just don't, as an industry, we don't get together, we don't share resources, we don't share ideas. And now that it's getting desperate, I think it's the perfect time for us to start saying, I've got a volunteer base, do you want to borrow some of it? Or I've got access to this base. Normally what happens is we find an agency, we find certain individuals to do this and that, and we stick with them. And it's been great to date. COVID hit, reset everything, and now I think it's critical where government, along with industry itself, and also just the individuals and everyone who participates, we need to start focusing more on that cooperation and collaboration, I think, moving forward to solve a lot of those shortages and issues.
I think that's well said. Well said. Did you want to add to that, Gayle?
Yeah, thanks. Another one too is the underutilised cohorts. So, mature age workers, definitely, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So we're working on a First Nations peoples training strategy to try and get more people trained up across a whole range of roles, including events, and people with disabilities and different roles that people where the disability may not be a barrier to actually doing the role. And talking about mature age workers, I was actually in the Whitsundays last week and at Proserpine Airport, and all the flights were delayed. So the airport, it's not, if you've ever been there, it's a really small airport, and it was completely full, and everyone was sort of cranky because everyone wanted to go home. And the cafe at the airport, all of the staff were over 60. And they were the nicest, friendliest group of people that you'd ever come across, and it was really nice to engage with them. But everyone, there was standing room only in the airport, and when they had a lull in serving customers, they started singing and playing the ukulele, and they actually entertained all the passengers while we sat there for another hour waiting for the flights to arrive. So there was another dynamic they could actually bring. But it was interesting to see that airport actually only operates certain hours of the day, and that for that cohort, that was perfect for them. So a lot of them aren't looking for full-time roles, and festivals and events. We also see cruise lines. We see a lot of people, a lot of mature age workers, they love being tour guides when the cruise ships come in, because it's only so many days a year. They don't have to do it all the time. They don't want to work full time. So that's definitely a really good option, is to looking at some of those cohorts and how you could fill some of those roles.
Excellent. Would some of you people who run events here today consider that? Maybe over 50s, perhaps. Yeah. Any final comments that you would like to make before we open it up to the audience for questions?
I might just add, I know that everyone in the room is from all different regions, and on behalf of TAFE and all the other TAFEs around Queensland and Australia, I highly recommend you reach out, get in touch. I always say the best way to get through all the admin, ask for the event teachers. They're the ones that are face-to-face with all the event students that are desperate for hours or desperate for experience, really want to get some volunteer roles that are interested to them. So I'd recommend to reach out to them and use them to help you fill your volunteer roles. And also, now that we've got some great partnerships with a lot of those event companies, they reach out to us to find a good some of our alumni. So Audra and myself, who's the other teacher here in the room today, will constantly get, have you got someone great? We're looking for this event coordinator role. Have you got someone you recommend? We've got years of students that we still stay in touch with that will put out, this is a role that you might be interested in. This would really suit new people. So a lot of the people we're actually filling, we actually had an ex-student who came to us to fill a new role. She's now an event manager, and she employed one of our new students that had just graduated as her event coordinator. So make those partnerships, and if you can, give back to them as well. We love a good guest speaker. We love you guys to share your journey and how you got to where you are. So if you've got an opportunity to go and even just say, look, I'm available to speak to your students, have me in. And it's really rewarding, even just to give back to the new event personnel that are going to be working with you one day as well. We'd love to have you in. Anyone on the Gold Coast, come see us afterwards.
Gil, you need to do some. You need to inspire those students.
It's funny you should say that, because there used to be a great event management school at UTS, and that's closed. We used to get lots of secondment. I used to go and speak to them, but we used to get lots of secondments and lots of staff. Lots of staff from that.
Yeah, a good way to find new schools is just do an online search of who's delivering event courses. It could just be a matter of, I've said in our sector, of course, it's the Cert 3, Cert 4 and Diploma of events, but there's a lot of degrees as well, so reach out to your tertiary, and they're doing some great things as well, and there's a lot of students. Internships are really a great way as well, where the student might be able to just do one day a week for the lead up to your event. They're really interested in that, where they can see what really happens in that lead up, as well as just, volunteering at the event itself, so they can see how it all comes together. There's so many different opportunities. So I would just be doing a search, Google search, events in your area, event courses in your area, and you'll find different schools. And there's a lot of private RTOs as well as TAFEs, and they're all looking for the same sort of opportunities for their students too.
And Gayle, this is for you as well. Will you be stealing the Logies, the ARIA Awards and everything else from Melbourne? Because, it's working so far for Queensland.
We'll do what we can.
Would you like to add some
Yeah,
final
just building on that, as well as the TAFEs, also the universities. So there's a lot of tourism and hospitality students at universities, and we host interns ourselves, and we have them working on developing up projects or looking at, we get economic students, all types of students, marketing, and we find them, they're really, really passionate about, being involved and actually contributing. And it might be one day a week, then you might hit holidays and then they'll be there every day. But it is really good to help. And if you want to do something special or something, look into a different dynamic that you might be looking to include in your festival, then you could get a student on to help you do some of that investigation and what that might look like, because everyone's time poor. We're also open to suggestions. If you have suggestions on, well, what can we do? We've got this idea, would the government be interested or would be interested in helping? And we did have a suggestion, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was from one of the festivals in the Outback, and they said, we'd love to have some training for all of our event staff and also training for our volunteers. At the time, we didn't have any funding, but then there was actually a natural disaster, and we can actually apply to get funding from the Australian government to deliver economic recovery projects, they're called. And we actually had, as part of the tourism recovery project, we actually set aside some money for training of people working in events and festivals, and we actually did that with TAFE. So while I wasn't able to action that idea straight away, it was probably within a year we were able to action it. So we're really open to new ideas, different ways of doing things, because if we can't act on it now, we'll look at how we can act on it hopefully in the near future.
And for people here in Queensland, grants, oh my goodness, you find out after the event that there's grants available, or you could have applied for a grant for that to help pay for this. And where do you put all your the current grants that are available for event organisers?
Yeah, there's a couple of places. One is for businesses more generally, but I think the event grants are on there as well, is on the Business Queensland website in Queensland. Tourism Events Queensland, they run the Queensland Destination Events program, and they have funding rounds, a couple of rounds a year, and you can get dedicated funding for events through those rounds. But yeah, I think the Business Queensland has those listed there as well.
Yeah. And Badi, would you like to have any final comments?
Sure, but I think Paul has a question.
Oh, okay,
Thanks,
I'm sorry.
Badi. Yeah, I lost about 50, 60 contracted facilitators that worked for us around Australia during COVID, and rebuilding and that workforce now, it's been a challenge in terms of they all went off to do stuff in retail or become baristas or whatever rather than the entertainment industry. So a lot of these people now are doing multiple jobs, and they often wait to see what job they're going to get, or they might cancel on you because they've all of a sudden got a DJ job that's going to pay more. Does anyone have any ideas in terms of how to incentivise them or combat that?
Oh, that's hard. That's really hard. We experience this all the time, right? So, and especially now with more modern technology platforms where people have a bit more control over their schedule. So before you used to book them in, they'd get the piece of paper. And if they wanted to cancel, you'd make it hard. They couldn't call you, and so they'd have to turn up. Otherwise, there'd be problems. Now, with a lot of the online, people will cancel, a few hours before the event. We've seen that a couple of times where people just sit there on the app and go, oh, I can't make it. In terms of incentivizing, listen, our perspective or the approach that we take is we're happy to sit there and we have obligations, and not just statutory obligations where we have to pay this minimum or whatever. But, we have obligations to ensure that you're safe, you enjoy the event, you're going to be okay, you're going to finish off the event doing a reasonable level of work where you're not drained and never want to go back to that. But then in return, we expect a certain, we have obligations that we expect our staff to, pay back as well. And so everything from our system tracks that we were talking about, attendance, whether you're on time, things like that. If you cancel or you swap out too many shifts, you're out. And whilst we talk about this shortage of labor, I don't think there's a shortage of people. It's just getting them back to decide where they want to go, right? And like you were saying, incentivizing them, getting them to decide as we come out of COVID. We've spoken a lot of times about, besides COVID now and the cancellations we used to have, you look at Splendor where day one it was cancelled, and these poor guys just sitting there going, all right, there's a day of work gone. So as they come out in that hesitancy, we're trying to get them to commit. And there's never been a more exciting time. Like for me in the event and festival industry, it's so exciting. We're coming back. It's been 2 years. It's been hell as we regroup. But it's also an exciting opportunity for us maybe to rethink how we provide this service that goes forward. It doesn't need to be the traditional format that sat there, in terms of this is how we delivered it and this is how we do it now, how we organize our staff, what the interactive points are. Yesterday, FIRF presented the online streaming platform as an addition then to the event. And that's another way that events can be a little bit different, an addition. So then even with the staff, why don't we think about how do we utilize them, not not very differently. We don't have to rock the boat necessarily, like knock it all down and rebuild, but essentially COVID has done that, hasn't it? So as we get people back in, let's start to think about how creative can we get? Where can we cross-utilize individuals? You know, in certain sectors, you sit there and say, you know what, if you do this, we can utilize you there. And then the other thing possibly, Paul, you know, in terms of incentivizing, it's hard. It's really, really hard, you know, to bring it back there. I think just we're finding constant communication with these guys and reassurance is something that just works for us.
Does anyone in the room maybe have some advice for Paul? Have you had to navigate that where you've had to incentivise or, pardon me, try to keep staff on? Can anyone else offer advice perhaps? Has anyone had to navigate that? Get the microphone.
Thank you. I actually have a question as well. But leading on to Paul's question, I'm lucky that I'm in an organisation where we have different arms, and the events arm is just a small part of the business. The events that we do, although we have a capacity for 1,000 people, it's only 5% of the total business revenue each financial year. So what we do is we look within our business as to ways we can incentivise, i.e. Free gym memberships, discounted accommodation. And I know it's very easy to say that when those resources are at hand, but I think maybe looking within your organisation and asking those people what it is that you could do to actually entice them to put you as that number one of the top 3 jobs that they've got. We have many staff that have more than one job, and it's really difficult these days to ask for the commitment. And even you guys were talking about the more senior hospitality staff. We actually find that even when we reach out to agencies, we prefer to actually get the seniors coming in. Might be a 600 pax gala dinner, and if we say order 35 or 40 staff and more than half of them are of the older category, we're going to have a good night because we know they've got a good attitude, they're committed, they've been there, they've done that, they've seen a lot. Occasionally that doesn't work out, but more often than not it does. But with our core group that also do have other commitments, they work exciting jobs in nightclubs and festivals and everywhere that's Instagrammable for them. We go to them and we ask them what it is we can do. A lot of the time it is just a guarantee of shifts with regular, normal weekend or weekend day nights off. So whether it be saying, look, if you can sign yourself away to me as your number one priority, I'll ensure that you get every 3rd Saturday, Sunday off. And that is slowly starting to take shape for us and sort of reward us now.
Maybe if they complete X amount of shifts or X amount of hours, Paul, you incentivise with free gig tickets or $100 bonus. I don't know what the answer is, but yeah. Did you have a question as well?
Sorry to be a hog. Off the back of what I was just saying, my question is actually for Joe. I wanted to ask you, when we talk about events, and particularly with people that are in the education process now, we find ourselves talking about the exciting side of it, and all the possibilities and all the high moments. We don't really find ourselves discussing the lower moments or even the more mundane work that comes along with events. I find with our recruitment process, what we struggle to get across is it's not always the high that everyone has touched on. At the end of a successful event, yes, you do get that, but there's still cutlery to be polished, and there's still glassware to be polished, there's still cleaning to be done, there's bars to be restocked. And we're finding that we come up against an attitude of not so much I'm too good to do that stuff, but, is there not someone else that just comes in and does that? How do we navigate that and how do we entice those people to stick around and find that balance between the mundaneness and then the exciting times?
Yeah, I think as teachers, we're the ones that break that bubble for them. They actually have to run their own event, so they're doing all of that and that lead up, because I know it's stressful getting all the paperwork approved, and they have to have every step along the way is, okay, where's this, where's your where's your run sheet? No, that's missing. Where's your banquet event order? That's not right. Go and do that again. So they're doing a lot of that planning and preparation, and they have to do a lot of that themselves. I'm finding that even with our guest speakers that come in, I know we took them for a tour to the Gold Coast Convention Centre, and we were looking at an association. I was saying to one of the organisers, tell them about how exciting it is that you get to travel everywhere. She said, we just see the inside of airports. We don't really get to see anything outside the airport. I'm like, thanks for your honesty there. But but it is, I mean, they do know there is, it can take you, it can take you around the world. Events industry's got, but there is a lot of work. And although you can sit back and enjoy those moments, and I took what we were talking about, Vivid. I love seeing Vivid, but to see when you walk through and it brings tears to your eyes when your event all comes together, they get to experience that. And because it's all assessment and they have to get everything organised, I think in a course, yes, but I agree with you. And like you were saying, everyone's having this same problem about you might book certain staff to come and they just don't show up. And you get so many no-shows, and we get it even with trying to get volunteer roles. I can put out a roster of this is all the volunteer students, but it doesn't stop them from saying, actually, Mum's having a party this Saturday and I can't do that anymore. I find it is harder with the younger ones where work isn't their number one anymore. And I don't know if that was the pandemic or maybe it started with that generation. There's a lot of students and a lot of people that have got this gig economy going on where they've got like 3 or 4 different things they're doing, and they're just going to go with what suits them at that time. So we're trying to, in the course, we're trying to let them know that, the event industry has got some amazing parts, and yes, look what it looks like when it all comes together. But there's a lot of work that gets that to there, and there's a lot of late nights, and there's that 2 weeks before your event. Don't expect to sleep. You'll be working 7 days. That's just how it's going to happen. So we try to let them know.
Badi, have you got anything to say on that? Because, I mean, you're recruiting people. I mean, a lot of them must go, I've got a birthday this weekend. No, I can't work. Because that I'm sure happens.
It does. So Gina made a really valid point before where she said that people work the multiple jobs, but then they want some regularity in terms of free time. And I think it's a combination, one of we've seen an increase in wages. We're seeing most people now, because of COVID, have come out with a certain expectation in terms of remuneration, and fairly so. You need to be paid what you're worth. And I think then, so they don't need to work 60 hours to pay the rent anymore because they've got options. They can hop in and they can drive an Uber for a couple of nights a week, or they can do Deliveroo, or they can go and work in the bar and maybe do the event here and there. So they're not working, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night on top of everything else they do to pay the basic expenses there. And I think that's how, I don't know if it's a generational change where they don't want to work. I think it's just when you can provide for yourself, you go, well, let me enjoy, what my hard work's for. And so I think, but then to the point, and what you do really wonderfully is you go out and you communicate with your staff and you say, what do I need to do? And I think staff appreciate that communication aspect, just to say, how do I make you important? How do I make you feel important so that you show me that respect back?
Certainly in my role, we're finding it really difficult to find experienced event people. As we were saying, where the bloody hell are they? Where have they gone? Not talking entry level, although they're hard to find too, but skilled event professionals who, 2 or 3 years ago you would advertise a job at Vivid or the City of Sydney or whatever and get 200 or 300 applicants. Now we're lucky to get 1 or 2. So that's the same but different in a sense. So I don't know whether others are having that sort of problem, but I think we're about to face a real crisis
Yeah, I agree. And it was interesting that you say that because I was looking at a report done, and it was 2019 that research was showing that there was going to be a glut for about 23% of event management loss of people in that area. And that was in 2019, before pandemic, that they realised we were at that point where this is going to be a problem if we don't find people to fill that. And I think the figures were around that 23%, that there was a gap in the market of experienced event managers. And I think then all of a sudden we had what's happened over the last 2 years, and we did lose a lot of really good professionals in them. And what I'm hearing from people that I know in the industry and the networks I have is that the people that were left behind are overworked, understaffed. The people they're working with might be underskilled, and they're struggling. And so I think even the crisis that you're talking about is going to get worse as the rest of us are trying to work even harder to cover that gap. And we're going to experience things like burnout. And so I do have to think we've got to start taking care of ourselves now and realise, okay, we're going to need to start training within. I think what I was saying before is maybe adding event management, or looking that the government could add event management as one of the skilled occupation lists, the migrant, where people have got a real opportunity to move and live in Australia as a permanent resident. That would see that really helped. Hasn't completely solved the cookery side, but we're seeing numbers, just to put it into perspective, our enrolments just in July was about 46 international students for the cookery sector, being that they've got a real possibility of being a permanent resident here. Events in our international, we had none, because people aren't thinking, oh yeah, I want to go to Australia to study, but I will have to go home afterwards. If we can do things like that and talk to the government about, we know we can get these skilled people from overseas to come here as well, and then train up our new staff, whether or not 2 years. I mean, our course is 12 months and they're not going to have the experience behind it, but looking at how we can change our course as well. So the government's already identified that we've got gaps in our event management qualifications. They've added in really important parts of the course now in promotion, sales, in marketing fields, social media. So those skills that current staff don't have. So we'll see that coming through, but we're not going to feel that for years. So I agree with you. You know.
Gayle, I'm interested. Oh, I'm sorry. Ah. So how about just everyone here? We'll just form the body today, the Australian Festival Industry Body. I'm nominating Gil as chair. Sorry, Gil. Sorry. I just do want to say, the music managers of Australia, artist managers, it's funny you say that didn't feel you had any weight because, music management, artist management, but they managed to form a body together they're the Australian Music Managers Alliance, and they have made change and lobbied change for the music industry. It's not impossible, it's doable, and if you feel you're not being heard, then this could be the best thing to come out of these 2.5 days. Gayle, I'm interested what you might have to say with some of these comments here today about government not listening.
We're just not listening. I think you've almost solved the problem just in your discussions here. Well, solved how to take steps to address the problem. I don't think you've solved the problem completely. But there are a lot of industry bodies. We work really closely with all of the industry bodies in Queensland and some of the national ones. And you're right, there isn't one for festivals. And it's through, not that I'm aware of anyway, but it's through those bodies that they actually, they advocate on behalf of the industry, and it's seen from a government perspective, actually sitting opposite the table to you. It's a cohesive, collaborative approach to government. It's one voice, which means government's not going to get 20 different voices, all asking for something slightly similar with their own take on it. It's actually one voice. It's a lot easier for government to then go, right, okay, so what do we do? How do we actually work through this? And it does make a difference. A lot of you see it in professional sports, you'll see it in other industries. You talked about the artists. That's often how change happens with government is the industry bodies actually consulting with their members, consulting with industry, coming up with suggestions and lobbying the government for change. And, lobbying in terms of migration, the skilled occupation list, for those of you who are familiar with the Australia's migration program. So it's usually reviewed every year. And now is really the time to be going to the Australian government and saying, we want to see these occupations on there. They're not there. They're there. They actually do have... is there a certifying body who can certify those skills or a way of confirming that those skills are actually valid? This is when a person applies. So, the person applies, they say, yeah, I'm a trained festival director. Who can actually say, yeah, they really are a trained festival director? So who is your certifying body? If you think, accountants, it's the CAs, the certified accountant bodies. It's those types of bodies go, yes, they are. That qualification actually counts. Whether it's the training, whether it's the TAFE, saying, yep, that's an equivalent training level or university, but how does that actually work? Because then the Australian government know that the people who are applying and being approved actually do have those particular skills that are in need within the country. So that's one thing in terms of the skill migration. And the Australian government, as part of the federal election earlier this year, they had an election commitment. This is the government that got in. They had an election commitment to do training and skills and workforce development for tourism and events industry. So they're looking at what that looks like. So, it was a Labor Party Albanese government commitment. So the Australian government right now are looking at, they've been talking to us, what do we actually need? What should we be doing in this training and skills area to be able to implement that election commitment? And it's several $1 million. So, if there are particular things that you do need in the festival space, you should be, you can tell me, you can tell your local state government, because we're all talking to the Australian government about suggestions for what that could look like. And, the plain old lobbying, we receive lots of letters from businesses, industry bodies, all sorts of things that come to the Minister and the Premier and that end up going across my desk at some stage, and it's about what does industry want? What do businesses want? They want to see different changes. They want to see different things come in. They want to see different training or courses, or they want to see grants or particular support for things, or they want to see promotion of industries and what the skills, what the job opportunities are and how to make things more attractive. Homegrown events, all sorts of things. So there's lots of action you can take individually. Collectively, definitely would have more impact. And if you don't have an industry body of your own, go to the local Tourism Industry Council. So there's a TIC in every state and territory across the country, and they lobby for the industry. So they're
Just
tourism
create
and
one.
events. Or you could create one. There's tourism events, but you can go to them and say, this is what we need for the festivals industry in our state. And then they can actually include that in their lobbying, because they're talking to the Australian government, the state governments. I know most of the TICs are actually at the Jobs and Skills Summit in Canberra this week. So that's another avenue for you to pursue as well.
Badi, I believe-
Sorry, I just want to say a couple of things. I think there was a really valid point mentioned before where they say it's tourism and events, and we get lost within that tourism field, right? Because we can't compete with a resort. Let's go back to a festival or event, but let's think of the impact that we have on the economy. And I think you look at Vivid, you look at Eka, the impact that they have on those cities there are significant. Try flying up to Brisbane, when Eka's on and there's nothing. Like Qantas are charging you $1,100 return economy. And you're going, what the hell? And, hotel charges go up, but it's a boost for the local economy. And I think as an industry, listen, guys, I think there's kind of a consensus that's kind of brewing here right now. It makes sense. Let's go back to this. This is the first time we've had a proper national conference with regards to festival and events. And, from a government lobbying perspective, or even just letting them understand, festival and events are major revenue drivers. We're major employment opportunity providers, into those communities. And whether they be one-off and we see one event, consistent, regular festivals and events are held on so many different levels. And because we don't give them that importance, a lot of the local ones struggle to get funding, and then they rely on volunteers. And, they don't end up that great, or they don't live up to their potential. And then you got some of the bigger ones where, they might break out, or, again, two of the biggest for me, let's talk about Vivid and Eka again. They just stand out. They have national prominence there. But I think, my suggestion today is someone in the room needs to maybe just pick up that idea and run with it, which is how do we sit there and build a collective that represents the interest for festivals and events?
Yeah, you can.
I'm nominating Kim for that. Sorry, do you want to get one issue that I'm finding with finding skilled jobs, not finding staff for skilled jobs, is that, we all know that all of these jobs can be done remotely now, and more people want to work remotely. But if you jump online and look for any event or tourism specific job, it'll say you can work remotely if you're within 15 k's of the office, or if you're within a certain distance from the CBD of the major cities. So people are wanting skilled workers for these jobs, saying they're remote, but not allowing people to be remote for those jobs.
And we've got a question down here, haven't we?
I've got one I was just going to mention as well, which from a different side of things, I'm in production rather than event management and everything. And we're having as much issue as you guys are finding staff to do anything. And it's definitely that everyone ran away during COVID. And it seems to be that there's what you guys are saying, there's more people coming in through the event management diplomas and training and everything. Is there any training happening TAFE-wise for techs and for, people that know how to load trucks even, and forklift drivers for festival sites?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, I obviously don't work in that field. Our event qualification is more event management, but our production is amazing. Our Coomera campus, which is also a new campus here on the Gold Coast, they run on all the different types of production, and it's very tech related. Their campus is purpose-built for that. So we have in the past actually tried to put a few of the AV, and there's some really interesting components into the event management. We just found it was too busy for the students. We found they either wanted to be in that event management side, but then they didn't have all the production knowledge. So we've decided, we've talked a little bit about making it more like master classes where we could join with the Coomera campus and those specific production time. We do music and everything really over there. Trying to incorporate them both together, but you're like you said, they are two different careers. It'd be great to see them come together and try and bring it back together. And like you're saying, cross training, it's true. A lot of people did leave the industry when there wasn't work to be had. Trying to get them back is another story. With the event management side of things, I know there's actually, and like I said, there's probably not those people that are a specific event management experience, but they may have project management experience that might be a good way to look at cross-pollinating and thinking, okay, well, if I'm looking for an event manager, is there other fields? Because just like like we talk about it, the great resignation, people leaving, there are other people leaving other careers that would be great in the event management sector. I know I'm trying to desperately talk one of my best friends to leave his terrible finance job and come and join the event management because I think he would just make the most amazing project management. And looking at maybe project management roles and bringing people across it, okay, maybe they don't have the experience in event, but they do have some great project management experience, and fine, it wasn't in ours, but they can learn. That might be another solution. Probably not answering your question, so I apologise.
Almost from what, maybe jumping down the wrong side, but so almost from what I'm gathering, you're saying there's going to be a hell of a lot of event trained people and no techs to run the events. If it keeps going the way it's going.
I think our courses, maybe Audra I'm not sure if Audra knows the answer, but I know that those courses are doing quite well in the music production field, where actually our TAFE actually does, we work with the universities as well, so we're doing an actual degree as well where they're starting music production at TAFE and then continuing on to, and I think their enrolments are pretty good, but like I said, it's a different field to what I'm in, so I can't really say to how many numbers are coming through, but I know that the course is doing quite well and they are getting numbers through the production side too. Hopefully that will help in a few years when they're all qualified as well.
I think you need to go to high schools and start speaking to high school students, inspiring. Well, yeah.
I was just going to interject and totally support what Joe was saying. Sorry, hi, I'm Audra, the other event teacher. The live production staging and all the things that you're talking about, they are very busy, very full courses to our understanding. And a lot of years we've tried, like Joe said, to integrate, do workshops, to get even put elective units in our qualification. But by doing that, we then have to go, oh, do we kick out marketing and sponsorship? Because, you're only allowed, we can't over-deliver, etc. But I was just about to say, QTIC, you mentioned about the industry councils. QTIC, for example, would, they're the sort of conversations that you should be having with them, because I know next week when we do these careers roadshows, the Come and Try days, they're focusing on hospitality, cookery, and as much as I wanted the events to be a focus, they're actually really looking more at tourism. And Joe and I were talking last week about one of the activities that they're going to showcase with the attendees. They're mostly high school, 10, 11 and 12 years, and job seekers, return to workers, is marine tourism. And we both went, oh, okay, all right. We want to showcase events because we want to attract people to come into our industry, well, our courses for events, and we don't do a marine tourism course. And we sort of had to Google a bit and go, didn't we? What is that? But I guess what I'm trying to say is that if, obviously marine tourism have jumped up and down and said, we're short of people, and so as part of their roadshows, they want to incorporate that into the delivery or the workshop for the whole 2-day program. So I don't know, that's just a conversation maybe have with them. But I really personally, and I know Joe feels the same, that we've always found if there was anything lacking in our graduates is that knowledge. We have a unit called staging components, right? It really is just an FYI, because that's part of the training package. But to add other units in, my God, we could add units until the cows come home, but it's too expensive for students then.
We've got 10 minutes left. I know we've got a question down here. Come on. A real quick question, no problem. Yeah, go on. So is anyone aware of the Australian Festivals Association? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
To yeah, so we can.
Oh my God, I'm a famous person. Yeah, so we started consulting with them in regards to user pay police schemes, and then we lent on them pretty heavily when it came to COVID and some of the, I guess, just navigating some of the language when we were talking to government bodies, because that's predominantly what my job became during COVID. I just fought with the government a lot, so they were a really great resource, so I'd just recommend checking them out.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. It's something we explain to the students in there, like day one is join an association, join newsletters, get involved. And I know there are some industries, like you were saying, that do it really well. And they're even with about the Jobs Summit tomorrow in Canberra. The reason why I know is I'm also heavily involved with the Restaurant and Caterers Association. And they're a very strong association across Australia. And they speak very loud for the industry, hence why cookery is on the list. And they have they sent it out to all their members. Here are the 5 points we are lobbying for tomorrow. This is what we want to see that's going to help our industry. So joining an association and finding one that's going to be appropriate to your field is definitely recommended. And yeah, it does come with costs, but it means that you've got a voice and that you can have a say in what you need.
Has anyone got anything else to add to the conversation? Yeah.
Probably just to, I guess, to support what Gayle had said, for myself sitting on the government side of that table of conversation with industry associations, whilst there may be a variety of different themes or specialty sectors within the industry, it's nice from a government perspective to have one consistent voice around the commonality of themes that are affecting all of them. So, if you do have an issue, hopefully you might be able to see consistency in the same issues that are affecting those other ones, that you can collectively come together and have a really robust conversation with government. Because the minute you sort of start to end up having independent views that are in conflict with others, then you sort of lose the compelling message that you might want to convey and reach agreement on. So when you think about staff losses in the industry and those sorts of things, if it's consistent across all of them, then that makes for a much easier conversation to have at a table where you're trying to make some change.
All right. Anyone else? Yeah.
I wasn't going to stay standing up. Hi, I'm Melissa Keenan. I actually am from Ecotourism Australia, which may seem like a strange bent to be here, but I have a reason. I just actually wanted to contribute. I was actually at the Tourism Job Summit in Canberra yesterday. I chose to come back last night so I could come here. I second everything you say about the value of professional associations and so forth. I would encourage you so strongly after what I learnt yesterday to also think about economies of scale and who you can join with. And Gayle's comment about the ticks is really prevalent. And I'll give you a stat. In terms of workforce deployment strategy, if you look at tourism in Australia, it's not currently classified in one of the 9 clusters of workforce priorities for the government. So tourism isn't captured in the 9. Tourism jobs were put in with florists, funeral, all sorts of industries. So from an events perspective, I would say when it suits, link into tourism, link into your tourism associations, show that economic contribution as part of that visitor economy, because you're going to get great attraction. And I share that because I was incredibly surprised by some of those stats yesterday. But I would also say on a massive positive, the representation yesterday talked about all the issues you've talked about today around labour shortages, migration, and there's some really fabulous positioning being put to the big forum tomorrow on behalf of tourism, and I would say on behalf of events from the conversation I heard. So happy to share with anyone if you want to have a conversation with me later. Thanks.
Thanks so much, and thank you for coming here today after yesterday. Thanks, Di. Yeah, well, maybe we can have that conversation and maybe continue. Yeah. We've just got one more question and then we have to wrap it up. So can we?
Yeah, it's not really a question. I think something that I've taken away from this, like we're all facing that issue on getting, those upper level positions filled, things like that. And I think if we don't take the opportunity right now to upskill those that we can move into those roles, we will continue to see that shortage and we will struggle to fill those roles. And I second Joe's point in let's look at other industries, because I know, my sister's a project manager, and I can tell you, looking at some of the projects she's run, she could hands down definitely, step into one of those event roles and put it together and assist and do what's needed. But because she doesn't have that event experience, she's not really considered for it. So I think we need to think about how can we upskill and give those who aren't quite there yet the opportunity to step up, to learn and to move into those roles. And then how do we allow people from other industries who might be looking for a bit of a career change or something to do with, something a bit different, how do we allow them to come in and show that they're also capable of doing it? I know it means right now it might mean some extra work for us because we have to guide them a little bit, but then I think in the long run, we're going to start to have that labour force that we actually need and want.
Well said. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank our expert panel. This has been a really great discussion. I think we should continue it, but perhaps tonight or tomorrow, certainly. And I'm even thinking, I don't even know, Di, you might be able to let me know, but is there a WhatsApp or is there a Facebook group in which we could, I don't know if people are even on Facebook, so I don't know if it's said, or LinkedIn or whatever, where we continue these discussions, perhaps the people that are here that want to continue these discussions, that want to help, maybe someone is looking for a project manager and, wants to get someone who knows someone. I don't know, but I'm just wondering if that, again, if you want to continue this exchange of ideas and thoughts, if something like that. I'll find out anyway for tomorrow, for tomorrow anyway. But I just want to thank Gayle, Joe and Badi. Thank you so much.